Watch your pot pickers, it's album review time guys, and today we are reviewing the album by Mien, which is called Mien. Mien, people, spelt M-I-E-N. According to the dictionary, it's a person's appearance or manner. According to this album, it's a psych rock kind of thing type supergroup made up of Alex Maas from the Black Angels, Tom Furse from the Horrors, Rishi Dhir from the Elephant Stone, and John Mark Lapham from the Earlies. And they've got together over space and time, sometimes in a room together, apparently sometimes they've been sending stuff to people electronically, and they've made this album. So let's have a look at it, shall we? Well, the reason I really wanted to check this album, and was in fact looking forward to it, is because it features Alex Maas of the Black Angels. I'm a huge fan of the Black Angels, and in fact I've done a video about the Black Angels and there's a link below to it. Do have a look at that if you're interested in seeing what I've got to say about them. This album is a lot more minimal than, say, the Black Angels or the Horrors, or even Elephant Stone that I'm aware of. I also really enjoy the Elephant Stone's work. I'm not a huge fan of the Horrors, mind, but they tend to use both Black Angel and to a lesser extent Elephant Stone use a lot of layers in their sound, lots of drones, lots of guitar fuzz to build up layers of sound. And which to put their hooks of their tunes in. Hooks, people. This album's a lot more minimal. There's a lot more space in it. It's also a lot more electronic. It uses a lot of pulses, slow minimal beats, and enveloping bubbles and washes of synth to drag you into that sort of immersive psychedelic state. Does it work? Kind of. The standout tracks, it really does. They include Tired of Westerns Shouting.
Hey, people all over, let this be known, let this be said. Hey, people all over, let this be known, let this be
Alex Maas, I could listen to him recite a shopping list. I think he's got a great voice. And one of the things he really does well with his voice is a kind of restrained anger. I know we're all used to sort of psych rock people being like blissed out, but Alex has got a real kind of restrained anger he puts into that voice. And this does feature that very much so. There's a low rumble and a scattering of percussion, swelling synths, and a sitar hum going on in the background. It's not really the catchiest of songs, apart from the vocal melody. It doesn't contain a huge hook, and you could say that about a lot of the album. It's more of an immersive experience than a pop hit experience. Black Habit throbs along. It's got a sort of throbbing bass going on. It's got very understated sort of whispered, mumbled vocals. It builds with organ and fuzz guitar to a sort of feedback conclusion, and it's the nearest probably to a single on the album. In fact, it was released a single on the album. Other, on the other hand, is an almost ambient track. It sort of hums and dissipates a sort of low, generic, dystopian future sound, and it reminds me of Pie Corner Audio more than the sort of heavy rock or something like that. In that it's almost you could imagine it being the sort of background music almost in one of those sort of films set in the future where the world's gone horribly wrong. But I quite like the atmosphere it generates, and I am a fan of Pie Corner Audio as well, so I really enjoy that sort of thing. If you don't, you might not, but hey, I'm reviewing it, so my thoughts count here. And then there's Earth Moon with its sitar swirls and pop melody, probably the most accessible track on this. It also sounds a lot like a very good elephant stone track. It's got that sort of shimmer and that upward, uplifting almost kind of rhythm to it. It's the opening track on the album. It sets a little bit of a full storm I think, for the album, because the rest of the album's actually very sort of dark and quiet. There's also a rather slightly pointless reprise bit at the end. On the downside, there are places where it lacks a focus, and it does sound a bit like a side project. It kind of didn't really work as a whole at times, but at other times it really does. And it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but probably half the album really works as a whole, and the other half sounds like bits that have been tacked onto it. And it does sound like it somehow manages to be lesser than the sum of its parts, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not a Black Angels album or an Elephant Stone album or an Earlies album or, thank the Lord, a Horrors album. Horrors fans, leave comments below and tell me why I should like the Horrors, by the way. It seems like I'm pasting them because I'm not particularly a fan. I like Cat's Eyes, that's another Horrors offshoot. Maybe the Horrors should just focus on offshoots. For example, You Dreamt has got this cluttering sequences and percussion. It doesn't really go anywhere, and that's probably the fault I could say about a couple of tracks on this. They kind of start right and then sort of peter out without anything really happening. But I'm asking a lot to come up with a perfect album here. It's an amusing offshoot to what happens to the Black Angels, Elephant Stone, etc., rather than a huge addition to the discography of the various members taking part. But at its peak, it is really good, and it is really worth checking out. And I would give it a 7 out of 10 for this one. If you want to argue the point, or you don't agree with me, then do leave comments below, or you can contact me via Twitter at WHUMike. Remember to subscribe. We have lots of reviews, lots of different stuff on alternative music right here at Strum and Twang, so please do subscribe and hit the little bell icon so you get to know when we put up new videos or go live, which we're going to be doing soon. And yeah, let me know what you thought of this album if you've indeed heard it. Not a lot of people seem to have. Mien people, M-I-E-N, it's a bit of a weird word to get your mouth around as well. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you have done, leave a thumbs up for us, and hope to see you soon here at Strum and Twang. Bye now.
Timing